Hello and welcome to a decidedly chilly late January day here in beautiful Nova Scotia. Blue skies, the sun is shining, but it's about -5 out here today, and I will say all quiet on the western front, although not quite the western front, more my front veggie patch that I have here. So it may be snow on the ground, -5, and probably at least 3 months away from me actually doing any planting in this front veggie bed. But that's not to say that I'm not thinking about what I'm going to be planting in this veg bed. And as I've preached before, the 5 P's, prior preparation prevents poor performance. And what I mean by that is now's the best time to really plan your veg garden so that you can make the best use of it all the way through the season and get the maximum yield and the best vegetables. And people might be thinking, oh, not planning. I hate planning. I spend all my day at work planning. But planning is half the fun of the gardening bit. You can get down, have a look at what veggie seeds you've got, have a look at your veggie catalogues, do yourself a little plan of your garden and really sort of envisage the beauty and all the lovely tasting veg that you're going to be growing all the way through the year. So why don't you join me as I show you how I go through my planning process to hopefully provide the best yields and the best veg all the way through this season.
Welcome, Mr. Bond. We have been expecting you. What? Wrong vid? What, this isn't the man with the golden trowel? Oops.
Oh, excuse the frivolity. In these dark times, you've got to have a bit of humour in there now and then, even if it's in the form of my hopelessly hammy acting. Anyway, back to business. Planning your veg garden. Right, I'm going to assume, welcome to the Optimistic Gardener Planning HQ, otherwise known as my kitchen table. I'm going to assume that you have already set up your veg beds or your veg area, whatever it is. The first thing I want you to do is to step away from your veggie catalogues. They all look nice and glossy and they all want you to suck you in to buy all these different veg, but first of all put them away nice and tidy in a corner that you can't see and forget about them for the minute. Next thing I want you to do is to measure up your garden area, your veg beds, your raised beds, etc. How wide they are, how long they are, how many you've got. Have a look at the sun, where the sun comes from, etc. and just draw that down on a plan so that you've got a good plan of your veg beds. For instance, like mine there, as you can see, and as you can see on the screen of my computer, I've got it in a computer gardening planning tool. But basically just draw it up, all your veg beds, and then make 12 copies. If you're in an area like me up in Nova Scotia here, and really and truly I'm not actually using any of those veg beds until sort of the end of April time, and then it goes out to sort of December time, then you probably only need 7 or 8 copies rather than the 12. But in the UK, lots of areas further down in towards the south of US, etc. You guys in Australia, you can obviously use your veggie garden all year round for some of your different veg. So 12 copies, and then and then label each one of those copies for a month of the year, January all the way through to December. Now what I want you to do is to think of your top 5 veg that you like to eat. Once you've done that, write it down, and then ask your partner, your wife, your husband, whoever it is in your family that you're interacting with all the time that lives with you, ask them what their favourite 5 veg are, and get them to write it down as well, write it down in your list. And the reason I want you to do that is because they are the most important veg to you. So you want to be thinking about planting and how you're gonna, where you're gonna grow them, etc. The first thing, you don't want to worry about any other big list of veg. Those are the things that you're going to be eating a lot. So therefore, think about those first. You know, my favourites are tomatoes. I use them in a multitude of different dishes, so I want to be getting them down. Basil, tomato and basil, lots of different things. Pesto, I love to have pesto every day in the summer, so I want, you know, to be growing loads of basil. So tomatoes, basil, onions, using onions, whether they're just your normal onions or spring onions as I call them. Some of you guys might call them green onions or bunching onions. Those sort of onions, I want those as well, so they're on my list, using them as a base for lots of dishes. So what's that? Tomatoes, basil, onions, runner beans. So scarlet runner beans, I absolutely love scarlet runner beans, so I've got to have them. As well as being absolutely delicious, they're really beautiful with their scarlet red flowers throughout their once they start flowering all the way till sort of the first frost, they're just constantly in it, and they're a great addition to the garden to me, and they're really easy to grow. And then lettuce. So lettuce, and when I mean lettuce, I really mean just all the different leafy greens, whether it be lettuce itself or rocket, arugula, the mustards, Asian greens, all those different things. I lump them all in a my favourite top 5 list, and they're in there as well. I've also sneaking in coriander stroke cilantro, because I have some that comes back every single year in one of my veg bed areas, and I love that as well in curries and again in your different salsas and stuff throughout the year, and that's in there. And I've got, they're not on my list, but they're part of my perennial, well, they're actually on my early list, asparagus. I have a set aside asparagus bed because they're perennial. They're in there now and they come back every single year. And Sarah as well as tomato and basil, and she loves corn, beautiful corn, and potatoes and something else as well, yellow beans. So that's her list. So we've got a top 10 there. That's a good base of the veg that we want to eat throughout the summer. So then my 5 to 10 after that is peas, chilies, carrots, what else is there? Broccoli and courgettes. Can't remember what you call them in North America, courgettes. Something else, an Italian type name I think. Anyway, those, so there's my secondary. Once I've thought about the first lot, then I'll think about the second lot. So I'm going to assume that the veg that you're thinking of and you're wanting to grow, you can actually grow in your area. There's no point me, even though I love putting limes in all my different dishes, there's no point me trying to grow limes here in Nova Scotia. There's no chance. So, think about the veg that you're going to grow. Obviously, you can grow in your area. Whether it's under glass, because I've got greenhouses, so it may be, you may be able to grow it under glass. And chilies, I found, grow better for me indoors rather than outdoors. So now what we do, so we've got our list, we'll just concentrate on our top 5. We've got our list of those, and we want to know whether we can plant them directly, we have to plant them directly outside, or can we sow them indirectly early. Things like carrots, really, you have to plant them straight away outside. So immediately I have to think, when can I actually grow them? Maybe late April I can start sowing those outside if it's still not frozen outside. So thinking about them, and what else that I'm growing can I grow indirectly indoors. The majority of the veg that you grow, you don't actually have to sow indoors early. You can sow it directly outside, other than really up here in sort of in the top half of North America, UK, etc. The majority of your veg you can grow outside, other than say tomatoes and chilies, things like that. they have a long growing season, so really and truly you want to start them early, and you can only really start them early here by starting them inside. So I sow them, put them in the downstairs room, let them germinate, and then I'll stick them in another room that gets a good amount of sunshine until I can actually put them in the greenhouse, etc., and then sow them and then plant them directly outside. But everything else you can actually plant mostly straight outside. You know, runner beans, peas, lettuce, all of those things you can actually just sow directly outside and not go through all the malarkey of planting inside. But the reason I do it, plant inside, is number one, to hedge my bets, to know that I've actually got some live plants, so that if, you know, when it's time, if I wanted to say grow peas and I'm going to sow them in April and suddenly we have this cold snap all the way through April and May, I'm behind the game here. But if I've got some peas on hand that I've already sown inside and they're little plants, then I can look after them until this cold snap finishes, then I can plant them in and I'm not behind the game. So to hedge my bets, I'll plant a load of stuff, sow a load of stuff early, and then also to make the most efficient use of my beds throughout the year, I want to say sow a load of lettuce, etc. early indoors, and then as soon as the ground is workable, I can plant it straight outdoors because it doesn't mind the cool temperatures. And then by the time, as that's coming towards its harvest, I could have sown some broccoli again indirectly inside, and they're little plants, and by the time the lettuce, it's ready to get rid of the lettuce, say they've gone to seed, I can whip them out, put the broccoli straight into that soil, and I've got 2 lots of plants that I've been able to grow in that bed in one season. And sometimes you can actually do 3. But the point is, I'm making maximum efficient use of that bed. First with the lettuce, whip that out, straight goes in the broccoli, and I've got that second crop in there, and I'm making a really good use of that bed, growing as much veg as I can. So that's why I sow indirectly. I don't use lights or anything like that. I've got a nice warm area to start, and then I put them in my room downstairs. It's got a nice patio door and light shining in, and then I can put them in the greenhouse. But you might want to use lights, etc. So first of all, we want to know when we're going to put, let's concentrate on tomatoes. So I've got a couple of packs of tomatoes here, and it says on the packet here, start indoors 6 to 8 weeks before last frost. So I know that my last frost can sometimes be the first week in June, depending on this moon malarkey. So we'll say the start of June. So I'm going to go back 8 weeks from there. So that's the start of May, start of April. So here it's really saying I want to plant these up, sow them indoors at the start of April. I'm going to be a bit cheeky and go back another couple of weeks. So mid-March. So I'm going to sow these in mid-March. And then I'll be able to plant them out in sort of June time. So my second thing I want you to do is make yourself up a nice list like this here. And what you'll have in the first column is all your different plants that you want to grow and their particular type. Then the date you're going to sow them on, or the date sown, the date potted up, the date planted out, and the harvest date in next columns as you go along. So what you can do now is write down, so I've got these tomatoes, so these are tomatoes, cherry Roma. Right, so I've got tomatoes, cherry Roma in the next column, and then we're saying that I'm probably I want to sow these indoors around mid-March. And actually, I'm going to grow a load in the greenhouse, so I can probably sow another load even earlier. So, but we'll say mid-March, right? So we've got mid-March there, and that should allow us to say plant out at the start of June. So I'm going to put that in that date planted out column. I'm only going to put it in pencil at the moment, just because we're not too sure yet. And then that should give me a harvest date. Where does it say the harvest? So it says here on the front here, in the corner, 75 to 80 days to harvest date. So 75 to 80 days, so we're talking all of June, all of July, sometime into August time, I'm thinking, maybe mid-August. So we'll put mid-August in the harvest date, and then that will give me an idea then. So then, what I'm going to do is with my actual drawing of our veg bed, we're going to say, right, so I'm going to be planting out in June time tomatoes, and so you're going to decide what bed you're going to put your tomatoes in. So then once you've decided what bed you're going to put it in, we're going to go to the month of June, and then write in tomatoes in this bed. So then the tomatoes are going to be in that bed in June, in July and August. So you know that bed now is in use from June until August. But what about before June? Could I maybe slot in some radishes or some lettuce that I've planted a bit earlier? Could I slot them in that bed? And get at least 6 weeks worth of leaves, maybe a month's worth of leaves out there early. Could I, have I got time? Not sure. Maybe I could cover it and do it. But the point being, I know now that the bed isn't in use until June. It's going to be in use from June until sort of mid-August. But after mid-August, I've got the latter half of, probably say, towards the end of August, obviously because we're going to have a few weeks worth of tomatoes going. But say sort of September time, that bed's not going to be in use. How can I put something in after, maybe some broccoli or some lettuce again? Maybe I can put some lettuce in that bed after September. So you can see what I've done there. So you want to work through all of your veg and think, right, when am I going to be planting it out? And then work back from there to when you actually need to sow it. And then put it in the bed that you're gonna, you've got in your map, and then you know all the way through how long that bed is going to be in use. So then you can be thinking, right, the broccoli is going to run out. The broccoli, sorry, is going to be harvested in second half of July. So from the second half of July, I know that bed is going to be in use. So maybe not in use. So maybe I can sow a second sowing of carrots, or maybe I can sow something early, another lot of broccoli, and just swap. As soon as I take the first lot of broccoli out, I can put the second lot of broccoli in that bed again, and we're using that all the way into the autumn time. So you now know what you're going to be planting and when, etc. Now, if you make this into a bit of a booklet, like I have, as you can see here, you know here what you're going to have in your beds in July. On the pages with nothing on them, you can write in, I need to sow broccoli now, halfway through this month, so that I can get ready to plant it in September. And that will give you your list of what you need to sow that month as well, to get ready to make efficient use of the beds later on when you get the chance. And then as you go through the year, you've made a list of all the different veg that you are going to be planting up. You can record when you sow it, if you needed to pod it up, when that date was, when you're planting out and when you're harvesting. And then next year, like I have here, this is my planting calendar 2020, I've got a nice record now of what veg I had in what bed, when I sowed it, when I harvested it, etc. And every year you've got a good record to start to build up a nice record, and you can put your notes, etc. Yeah, planted these out at this date, failed, it was too cold, or this was really good in this bed, likes it in this sunshine, it's a bit too sunny in this position, etc. And you can build up a good record every year of what you planted, when you planted it, when you harvested it, etc. So now you've done this for your actual, the number one veg that you want to grow. Now you can get your veg catalogues out, or if you haven't already, you can get your veg catalogues out and then start to think about filling up the beds that you haven't filled up with your number one staple vegetables or fruits, etc. And you can fill them in with some different ones that you, and that's always good to grow some different veg every year, just to see what it's like, or whether you're going to actually like it. Like this year, funnily enough, I've never actually grown beetroot before, but my sister mentioned it. It was easy to eat when I was having problems a couple of months ago eating. It was easy to make a veg beetroot burger or something out of beetroot. And then I was thinking, I've never actually grown. I didn't like the look of beetroot, so I'd never actually grown it. So this year I'm going to grow beetroot, and you know, I was looking through the veg catalogue thinking, yeah, I like that one, like that. So always good to grow something new every year. So look through your catalogue, pick one or two things that you're going to grow new, and again, that all goes in your log, in your planting calendar, planting calendar, and look, things are not going to always go exactly as the planting calendar says, or as you've written down in there, but at least, like I said, prior planning prevents poor performance. At least you know you've got that plan to start with. If you need to change a bits here and there, change it. But you've got a good framework to be most efficient use of all of your space that you've got throughout the year. You've that's been of use for you. It's exciting time of the year now, you know. Once you've done your planting calendar, and then you're looking for some extra veg through the planting catalogues, thinking about all that lovely veg that's coming up this year, and all the fantastic, and it's not just eating the veg, is it? It's that whole going through the year, getting out in the garden, getting all the fresh air, soil in your hands, not thinking about anything else, just de-stressing, growing your veg. Job's definitely a good one.